Hello friends, welcome to Behind the Shadows, a new way of telling stories.
The atmosphere in the local cafe was charged with excitement and a hint of nervousness. Four friends, Jake, Sarah, Mike, and Emily, were gathered around a strategically placed table by the window, where they could watch the fine rain falling outside. The aroma of fresh coffee mingled with the sweet scent of pastries displayed in the showcase, but the group's attention was far from the delights of the bakery. The topic of the day was the infamous abandoned amusement park, a place shrouded in legends and ghost stories. "Have you guys heard about what happened there?" Mike asked, shaking his head as his eyes sparkled with curiosity. "They say kids went missing, and the park was closed because of it." "Yeah, and they say it's still haunted," Sarah added, her voice a mix of fear and fascination. "But that just makes exploring it even more exciting." Jake, the boldest of the group, couldn't hide the mischievous grin spreading across his face. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Let's go. Have you thought about the content we could film for the channel? A nighttime exploration of a haunted park? That would be epic." Emily, feeling hesitant, looked at her friends. "What if something really happens? What do we do if we find something strange?" "Oh, Emily, you're overreacting. We're just exploring, and I'll make sure everything is recorded. And if something happens, we'll have an awesome video to show," Jake said, laughing as he grabbed his camera. With spirits high, the group decided that the adventure was on. They paid the bill and headed to the parking lot, where the darkness of the night began to envelop the surroundings. Each of their hearts raced, a mix of adrenaline and uncertainty. Arriving at the park, the sight was striking. The entrance was almost completely covered by vegetation, and the rusty sign that once proclaimed a world of fun now seemed a warning that the place was far from safe. "This is it. Look at this. It's perfect," Jake exclaimed, filming the details of the entrance. The tension hung thick in the air, but the excitement was palpable. "Let's go in. Are you sure we should do this?" Sarah questioned, hesitating as she looked at the thick brush surrounding the entrance. "I don't want to become just another scary story." But Jake's determination was contagious. He grabbed Emily's hand, and Mike followed closely behind, while Sarah, caught between fear and curiosity, had no choice but to tag along. The group entered the park, the sound of dry leaves crunching underfoot echoing like a symphony of anticipation and dread. The night was just beginning, and the true adventure awaited them in the shadows of the abandoned park. As the friends explored the park, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. Jake, leading the group, stopped in front of the imposing Ferris wheel, now covered in rust and creeping vines. "Check this out," he exclaimed, pointing at one of the cabins, which seemed to sway slowly back and forth, as if an invisible child was playing inside it. "It's just your imagination, Jake," Sarah said, trying to mask the nervousness in her voice. "This place has a way of playing tricks on us." Mike, more skeptical, stepped closer to the Ferris wheel, his gaze fixed on the cabin. "Or maybe there's something inside," he murmured, staring at the aging structure. "We should take a look." However, Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "I don't know, guys. This place doesn't sit right with me. Let's move away from here." But Jake, ever the fearless one, insisted on filming. "Just a moment, I need to get this for the channel." He approached the cabin, camera in hand, as the Ferris wheel creaked under the weight of time. Suddenly, the park lights began to flicker, creating an almost supernatural effect. Shadows seemed to come alive, moving stealthily among the abandoned rides. "What was that?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. "It must just be electrical issues," Mike tried to reassure them, but his voice betrayed his unease. "Let's investigate, it could be something interesting for the video." "I don't like this," Emily said, nervously glancing around. "We might be putting ourselves in danger." "Look, if we're scared, we'll never find out what really happened here," Jake insisted, a smile attempting to mask his own apprehension. "Come on, just a few more minutes." As they moved forward, the tension escalated. The group approached an area where the ride seemed to form a line, as if they were waiting for children who would never return. The unmistakable sound of children's laughter echoed around them, sending chills down their spines. "This is getting way too weird," Mike remarked, stopping for a moment. "Let's go, okay? This isn't fun anymore." On their way back, the lights began to flicker again, more intensely this time. Then, with a crack, everything went dark. The group stopped, dazed. "We need to get out of here," Sarah said, her voice trembling. now. But when they tried to turn back, they realized the exit path had vanished. What happened? Where's the entrance? Emily asked in a panic. Calm down, Jake shouted. We have to stay calm and think. The exit must be somewhere around here. Frustration and fear overwhelmed the group. This can't be happening, Mike grumbled. We can't be trapped here. Look, let's split up and search. That way we might find a way out, Jake suggested, but his proposal was met with suspicious glances. Splitting up is not a good idea, Sarah said. If we go off alone, it could be dangerous. But staying here will only make things worse, Jake insisted. The group hesitated, but upon seeing the urgency in his eyes, they agreed to move together, albeit cautiously. Each step echoed in the muffled silence, as the unease morphed into a palpable sense of desperation. The night seemed darker as the group advanced through the abandoned park. Emily, with her determined gaze, turned to her friends and said, "Let's keep going. There has to be an exit around here, and we can't let fear paralyze us." Jake hesitated, feeling the weight of the oppressive atmosphere. "Are you sure, Emily? This place feels alive." Mike and Sarah exchanged nervous glances, but after a moment of silence, they nodded. The hope of escaping the dark maze propelled them to follow Emily's suggestion. As they walked, they were drawn to an area where children's toys were haphazardly lined up. The laughter that had once seemed distant now echoed closer, bouncing off the rusted metal structures. "This isn't normal," Sarah murmured, her eyes wide as she stared at an old Ferris wheel in the background. "It's like the kids are still here, playing." The tension was palpable, and a chill ran down everyone's spine. Suddenly, an old doll with eyes that seemed to follow their every move began to sway slowly. The group instinctively recoiled, fear consuming them. "Did you see that?" Mike exclaimed, his voice trembling. The doll moved. "It can't be. It must just be our imagination," Emily replied, trying to maintain her calm. But the childish laughter, now louder and closer, seemed to mock their doubt. "We need to get out of here," Jake insisted, already stepping forward. However, as he tried to back away, he slipped on a damp surface and fell, hitting his knee on the cold ground. "Jake!" Sarah shouted, but he was more focused on getting up quickly. The voices that had seemed distant now called his name, whispering from the shadows. "Jake, come play with us." The voices, soft and seductive, were irresistible, but Jake couldn't see where the call was coming from. His heart raced, and he turned, trying to locate his friends. "Guys, where are you?" His voice echoed, but the only response was silence and more laughter, now mingled with a faint sobbing. The whispers grew more intense, wrapping around him in a shroud of despair. He knew he needed to reunite with the group, but the feeling of being watched ignited his survival instincts. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, Jake started to run in the opposite direction of the sound, determined not to be lured closer by the ghostly whispers that beckoned him. Jake was alone, surrounded by darkness that seemed to swallow him whole. The silence was deafening, but he could feel a presence, as if the very toys around him were watching. He remembered their laughter, the promises of adventure he had made to his friends, and now he found himself lost in a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. "Where are you guys?" he called out, his voice echoing, but the only response was the sound of his own rapid breathing. Meanwhile, Sarah, Mike, and Emily were trying to regroup, but the feeling of disorientation was palpable. The park, once vibrant, now seemed to transform into a nightmare. "We need to find Jake," Sarah shouted, her voice trembling with fear. Mike, always the most rational of the group, was trying to keep calm. "Calm down, Sarah. Let's just focus. If we stay calm, we can find each other." But his words were not enough to ease the growing desperation. They came across a row of rusty rides, each one more grotesque than the last. The shadows danced, and the sounds of childlike laughter grew louder, more insistent. "This isn't normal, we need to get out of here," Emily declared, her voice nearly pleading. "Look, that door." Mike pointed to a half-open entrance, filled with cobwebs. They ran towards it, but the feeling of being followed left them paralyzed for a moment. Upon entering the room, a wave of shock washed over the group. The walls were covered in old photographs of children, all with disturbing smiles that seemed to follow their movements. "What is this?" Sarah asked, fear evident in her eyes. "This is bizarre," Mike murmured, unable to look away from the images. "They look so happy," Emily commented, but there was a somber sadness in their voices. A sense of despair enveloped the group, as if the souls of those children were trying to communicate. "We need to get out of here, now," Sarah insisted, and one by one, they began to back away from the photos when suddenly, the door through which they had entered slammed shut with a bang. Jake, still lost in his own nightmare, heard the sound in the distance, his heart racing. He felt helpless, as if the darkness itself was trying to pull him in. "Friends," he whispered, wishing they could hear him. The atmosphere inside the House of Horrors was oppressive, the air thick with the smell of mold and decaying wood. Jake, Sarah, Mike, and Emily stepped inside, their hearts racing with adrenaline and fear. The floor creaked beneath their feet, and the walls seemed to shift around them, as if the house itself were alive and aware of their presence. "This is a terrible idea," Emily murmured, gripping Mike's arm tightly, as the whispers echoed in their ears, growing louder by the moment. "We need to leave now." "Calm down, Emily." "Let's just take a look," Jake replied, his boldness shining through. "It's all part of the experience." The house was filled with sad memories, the dancing shadows on the walls seemed to form distorted faces, and the friends began to see visions of the past. Sarah suddenly froze, her eyes wide as an image of an accident unfolded before her. A child, with an innocent smile, fell from a toy, and the scene repeated in an endless cycle. "Sarah, what's happening?" Mike shouted, seeing the look of horror on his friend's face. I can't stop seeing it," she replied, her voice quivering. "It's like the house knows my fear." The invisible hand pulling her caused her to scream, and Jake rushed toward her, but the darkness seemed to try to separate them. "Hold on. Don't let go," he ordered, feeling the pressure intensifying. "This house feeds on our worst fears," Emily said, a tear rolling down her cheek. "We need to face our fears, or we'll be consumed by them." Emily's words echoed in Jake's mind as he tried to focus. "Then let's face it together. If we can unite, we can overcome these visions." They gathered, forming a circle. "Talk about your fears," Jake encouraged, his voice steady. "We can't let this control us." "I'm afraid I'm not enough," Mike admitted, his voice low. "That I'll never be what everyone expects of me. I fear what might happen when I let sadness take over," Sarah confessed, as the visions danced around her. I'm afraid of being alone," Emily said, her vulnerability becoming evident. At that moment, the house seemed to tremble, and the whispers turned into screams. "Face them. Face them," a voice echoed, and the group realized that the ghosts were approaching, each bringing the pain and lamentations of the past. Jake took a deep breath and looked into his friend's eyes. "Together, we can free them. Let's do this." With renewed determination, they prepared to confront not only the ghosts but also their own fears, aware that the only way to escape that terrifying house was to confront the shadows dwelling within them. Jake felt the weight of tension in the air as his friends' faces grew paler in the presence of the ghosts. The children, who had once seemed to merely whisper and play, were now there, their ethereal forms hovering with the sadness that tore at the heart. He remembered how, in his childhood, he always sought the freedom to play without limits, and it was that memory that drove him to act. "Listen, we need to help them," Jake said, his voice strong yet filled with emotion. "They just want to play. They're not here to hurt us." Sarah, with tears in her eyes, looked at him, confused. "How do you know this?" "They are dead, Jake." "Yes, but they didn't choose this. They need us to free their souls, to liberate them from this place," Jake replied, feeling a growing connection with those spirits. He took a deep breath and began to tell a story, a memory of how he and his friends used to run through the park in their childhood, laughing and playing until the sun went down. "It was always more fun when we were together. Friendship is what keeps us alive, even when everything seems dark." As his words flowed, the expressions of the ghosts began to change. The children drew closer, their ethereal forms swaying gently, as if touched by a light breeze. The air around them seemed to vibrate with hope, but suddenly, a dense shadow emerged, interrupting Jake's connection with the spirits. The park's operator, a menacing figure with a furious glare, emerged from the shadows, shouting, "You have no right to interfere. Get out," shouted Mike, stepping in front of his friends. "You can't stop us." The tension was palpable as the park lights flickered wildly, creating a spectacle of light and darkness. Jake, feeling the urgency, turned to the spirits and urged, "Fight. You deserve your freedom." A chorus of joyful laughter and screams echoed, and the ghosts, now with renewed strength, joined in a dance around the operator. The shadow, furious, tried to grab the children, but every move it made was thwarted by the spirits who, in one last act of courage, launched themselves against him. The operator's figure began to fade, his anger dissipating into the darkness. Finally, with one last cry of despair, the operator vanished, and a deep silence enveloped the park. Jake and his friends looked at each other, exhausted but relieved. They ran toward the exit, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. However, as they crossed the park's threshold, a distant laugh echoed behind them, and they turned quickly. The atmosphere was still thick with the presence of the spirits. "This isn't over," Emily murmured, trembling. Jake looked at his camera, still recording, and felt a chill run down his spine as he noticed a shadow moving slowly behind them. The park, though empty, still whispered secrets, and the friends knew that the adventure was far from over. Exclamation mark.
Leave your comment and subscribe to the channel. Enjoy and see other stories on the channel. See you in the next story, if you dare.